Hi guys, and welcome to our daily Blender tip. For today's tip, I'm going to demonstrate how you can rig your camera to rotate around a specific object as part of an animation. The scene that I am using for this tutorial is a very simple one. We have a Suzanne object sitting on top of a cube with a simple 3-point lighting setup in place. We want to create an animation where the camera rotates around our entire object. Now that means that we need to first of all create a path for the camera to follow. I'm going to go into Solid View and then hit Shift and A to bring up my Add menu. I'm going to select Curve and then Circle. Then I'm going to increase my radius value and I'm going to increase it to a value of about 14, judging on the size of my scene. Your scene may differ in terms of how large you want the radius of your Bezier circle to be. I then want to bring this circle up on the Z-axis. So I'm going to bring it up to a value of around 1.5 meters. And then just orbit my view to confirm that that's a good height, because I want to focus on the Suzanne mesh in particular. And it might be just a tad low. Let's go up to 1.75. That looks perfect. And next I want to allow my camera to follow my circle. Now an additional and optional step is to add an empty and to parent the camera object to the empty. I prefer this optional step because it's going to give me a little bit more control over the camera's movements later on. So I'm going to create an empty object now by going Shift and A. Then I'm going to go down to where it says empty and select one of these empty objects. Now you can pick any of these empty objects that you like, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go with the simple plane axes, and then I'm going to increase the radius of my empty object so that it appears larger and more visible to a value of 3 meters. My next step is going to be to position the camera at the center of our scene. It's very important that when we parent our camera to our empty object, that they are both in the same location. The quickest way to do this is to select your camera object and then hit Alt and G to reset its location, and also Alt and R to reset the rotation. At the moment we can't see the camera, but if we just take a look underneath our scene, you can currently see the camera is pointing down from the center. With the camera object currently selected, hold down the Shift key and left click on the empty. Then hit Ctrl and P to bring up your Set Parent menu and select Object Keep Transform. If you take a look in the outliner panel, you will see we have our empty object, which is now the parent to our camera object. So with the empty object selected, if we attempt to grab the empty, we can move the camera as well. Next, we're going to, with the empty selected, add an object constraint. Left click and then select Follow Path. By the way, the Object Constraint tab is located here. So you may be on this tab, you will want to go on to this tab for the Object Constraint properties. The constraint that we want to use is Follow Path. So left click, then change our target to our Bezier circle. We can now see that the axis has now been repositioned on the Bezier circle. we're going to select follow curve and then fixed position, and we're going to keep these axes values the same. We can, if we wanted to, use these axes values to correct the positioning of our camera, but I'm actually going to use a different method. I'm going to have my camera track my monkey object in the center. So select our camera object, then add an object constraint and select track 2 from the list. Select your Suzanne mesh from this list, and you can see that the camera has rotated, but it's still not facing directly at our Suzanne mesh. This is where we can manipulate these to and up values for the axes. If I go -C and then Y, I can have my camera facing my Suzanne object. We can confirm this by pressing the number 0 on our number pad. What this does is, if I select my Suzanne mesh and then begin to move my Suzanne mesh to change its position, you can see that the camera is following our mesh. This would not be possible if we did not enable the track 2 constraint. What we can now do is we can select our empty object once again and add a keyframe to this offset value. Now I'm just going to bring up my timeline just so you can see it. We're currently on frame 1. If I was to hover my mouse over this offset value and then press I on my keyboard, I can create a keyframe. I'm then going to come to the end of my animation, which is at frame 250, set the offset value to 1, and then press I once again. Now if we go back to the beginning and then press play, you can see that our camera is rotating around our object. If we were to look at this animation from the view of our camera, by going into camera view and then pressing play, you can see the smooth rotation of the camera around our selected object. Hi guys, thanks for watching. If you are interested in learning more about Blender, then you can check out our free introductory masterclass over at our website. Click on the link in the video description to learn more.